Okay, a little side note in terms of file import to 3ds Max. For example, like Rhinoceros, I do want to talk a little bit about Rhinoceros, how to really correctly import this into 3ds Max. The one thing you actually have to be really careful about it is when you import this into import your file to anywhere locations, I mean whatever location that you want to import it to, and you choose a DWG, in this case AutoCAD, and there's options right underneath your Rhinoceros. This is very important. Many of people really ignore to know that there's options. So if you don't choose the correct you might end up that your file is not correctly oriented. So it's very important for you to choose the correct thing. So, and when you give a name, for example, I'm going to just call this the test. I'm going to import this in the I'm sorry, I'm going to export this. This is export select or export with origin. Just going to take the whole things out. And then there's option right there when you give DWG, and there's option right there, and you have to choose the meshes. Why meshes? This is very important because everything imported to 3ds Max will become meshes. So there's no point to convert it into a solid, convert to NURBS, whatever that is necessary. Meshes are the only entities will be translated into 3ds Max. So you have to turn them into meshes. In terms of versions, really, seriously, doesn't really matter. As long as you have meshes, you should be okay. Now, if you want imported line, 2D entities, circles, you have to make sure that the option is choose to something else called lines. They don't really transfers. You have 3D or you have 2D. The choice is pretty clear in that regard. Now, how about you have a rounded object? You have like a sphere, you have something rounded, and a circle, of course, is not too much of a problem. And but the other type of objects, like more of lofting objects, you might have a problem. That particular object maybe have to be exported in a different file format. In this case, I would say OBJ or 3ds. So when you export selected, you probably want to switch that to OBJ, or in this case, preferably 3ds, the early version of 3ds, of 3D Studio. Just simply give a name. There's no even option needed. So no option even needed. So that would be translated more smoother into 3ds Max by using 3ds file formats. Now if you have a SketchUp, Max read SketchUp directly, so you go there, import it, and you can just go ahead looking for IGS for NURBS and SketchUp right here. If I missed it, it's quite many of them, so you have to thoroughly reading them. Right here. Well, if not, if you don't see the SketchUp, maybe you can. Well, when you import, you go to File, Import, and you browse through the formats you can import your file to. You can certainly import the DWG. I just went through that with you. And what other format can you import? You can import FBX. I believe FBX is very good. If you have a file in elsewhere, such as in maybe Revit, which FBX will be much better way to import Revit file to 3ds Max. 3ds is an older version of 3ds DOS version, which actually work very well. It's a standard if you use 3ds file formats to import your file to 3ds Max. Max has no problem reading 3ds file. It is an earlier version, so it's pretty limited, but however, you have file that is very smooth, has a lot of surfaces, very organic. 3ds Studio 3ds is probably preferable choice. You import that to 3ds Max. Now IGES is for NURBS. Again, if you do want preserve the NURBS properties, especially Rhinoceros is a NURBS program, you want to import that to 3ds Max. IGES could be done, but it's not like Max can read every detail from Rhinoceros. Rhinoceros is indeed very, very complex in terms of NURBS, and I don't think Max can read a lot, but there's nothing you can do. IGES is one file format you can try. Nothing is perfect, especially import file. You need to have some data loss, so try to minimize as much as you can. You browse through this, and OBJ is another one very similar to 3ds. If you work with some other programs, OBJ perhaps is a little more popular than 3ds. I personally like 3ds better than OBJ, but nothing wrong with OBJ. Many earlier older programs read OBJ well. Then of course you can go Revit importer and RVT that directly. I like I said, nothing is really perfect in this case. You can certainly try. I prefer to use FBX. I don't think you can really completely translate Revit file into 3ds Max. Alright, and SAT, Axis SAT, which is a solid file. Max don't read any solid files, so we'll convert to a surface mesh. Pretty pointless. And you have Google SketchUp SKP, which is working well with the Google SketchUp version. Then you work with the STL, the Pseudolithal graphics file formats, which is for 3D printing. This is an overview in terms of import into 3ds Max. Thank you.